Hey guys, it's Mike, another King Arthur Legends Rise video. Today, I've been getting a lot of requests in the comments about putting together some sort of tier list. This game is really kind of a struggle to put a tier list together, and there's a few reasons for that. I think one of it is the complexities of the kit. The other thing is trying to compare champ for champ with chivalries and synergies, because there's a lot of like bull favored stuff or stag favored stuff, things of that nature, that can really affect whether or not a champion is S tier or A tier. And also, obviously, the build always comes into play. Like, what kind of stats can you get on these champions? Because I think most champions are capable of being really good with the right build. But that being said, because we've gotten so many requests for it, we're going to attempt to make a tier list that makes sense. So it's going to be kind of a series, because obviously there's a lot of different champions. It doesn't make sense to compare Caliber and Arthur to Nika, for example. They're just different heroes that do different things. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down into the sort section. Today we're going to look at these specific champions with the attack-based champions, and we're going to set them up in a tier list and just talk about each of them briefly. And I'll try not to go too long-winded on any particular champion. What I'm basing this off of for this particular category is, can they smack and how hard? So I do think that with some recent champions, there has been some power creep. A lot of this information is probably going to be fairly subjective just because of what I've seen in the game as far as what has done stuff for me. But I'm going to try to be as objective as I can and give you guys guidelines as to what I think. Now, that being said, if you disagree with me, by all means let me know, because there's probably heroes in here. For example, he's not in this category, but like Gawain right here. I know that he can smack. I've never actually built him and used him. So I'm probably not going to have the highest opinion of him because he doesn't make any of my team. Same thing with Claudius here. So I think that those are going to be, areas that are kind of fall down a little bit. But we're going to do our best to put together some sort of tier structure based on my limited knowledge of the game. So we're going to go ahead and start with Aqua Guinevere. Unfortunately, she's not my favorite champion as far as her aesthetics. I really think Netmarble should consider reskinning her completely and kind of taking this character seriously, maybe even renaming her. But her kit is amazing, and she is a great champion as far as on paper. She's bringing a lot to the table. She's got attack gauge decrease immunity for herself. She's got this dazzling charm, which increases her hit accuracy, attack, crit, strike. She's got protection. She does crit damage increase. She's got hound favor, effect accuracy synergies, as well as a more attack gauge increase for allies. But at the end of the day, she can absolutely smack. Attacks all enemies 2 times with 156%, and has a chance to gain the attack increase 2, as well as her single target ability can hit for quite a bit of damage as well. I have seen her many times over one-shot my entire team in arena. So with the right build and with the right chivalries, which is probably more crucial, you probably want to get her all the way to chivalry level 5 for her to really be S tier. But she has the capability of absolutely being an S tier damage dealer. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to place Aqua Guinevere in our S tier right there, and we'll move on to the next. I'm going to try to keep this fairly organized, but we'll see how it goes. So next on our list, we've got Bedivere. Now, Bedivere has kind of been a little bit power crept, and I do feel like, and this is probably subjective, but he's one of the only champions that I run into where I miss a lot unless I'm running hit accuracy. Which I think is kind of a struggle, because on that secondary, instead of getting attack speed or more attack, you kind of need to get that hit accuracy on him to be successful. With his passives, he's doing a little bit of damage with some extra hits when attacking. He gets 2 random hits on enemies and does pretty good damage, plus ignore defense. Now, this is kind of where it gets a little tricky to say, does he do more damage than somebody else? It's like, well, the damage percentage is lower, but he is ignoring 20% of defense. So theoretically, I mean, he could really smack by ignoring that defense. And depending on the enemy you're up against, how much defense they have, he could be a better solution because he's ignoring more of it. So that is something to consider as far as that goes. He's got 100% chance to trigger on a critical strike, so you want to build him with crit rate. 100% chance to reduce the hero's passive cooldowns by 1, and gain Pierce 1 for 1 turn. So that's going to be a pretty strong thing. And again, Pierce is ignoring defense. defense. So that's going to be additional defense ignored with his kit there. And then on the passive skill 3 here, he also can pick up some crit damage if he has a debuff on there. Crit damage increase 2, as well as charge vigor, so that's going to be pretty helpful. Also on the A1, I mean, he's going to hit, but it's not really a huge thing, but he can get this crit rate ability, which is kind of nice. Ideally, you're not running your A1 very frequently because you've got enough vigor to do your big damage. Here you're going to get that crit rate on his A2 as well, and this is great for single target damage. Again, you've got a good smack coming in here, and with a critical strike, he deals additional 168. So having him in crit rate is going to be crucial. Also having him in hit accuracy, because he can't crit if he doesn't hit him. So that's another piece too, but you can do quite a bit of damage there. That's over 300% damage with that ability on a single target. And then his AoE also smacks 2 times, as well as ignore some defense. So when he does get all of these extra perks on, gets these ignored defenses and pierces going on, he can smack pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and put him in the A tier. Now that being said, I think there has been a little bit of power creep on Bedivere. I think other champions are bringing more, so I think he's probably A- moving towards B tier versus a solid A tier, but I can't really put him in the B tier because he does smack and he's kind of an oldie but good. He does a great job. So next up we got Caliburn Arthur, and I think Caliburn Arthur is clearly S tier. He's probably the best damage dealer in the game, though he does require a little bit of setup. So he does, at the start of battle, he starts to increase his attack, his crit rate, crit damage, and hit accuracy over time. So the longer the battle goes on, this goes up. He grants crit rate increase to stag favor allies. He gets this Stygian aura that has a 1-turn cooldown. So basically every other turn he gets these extra hits, do additional 215%, also 5 hits. So for Pinvid and shields and barriers, this can be pretty beneficial. Also ignoring defense on that. And then on his passive 3, he also has this immortality where he basically can't die for 2 turns, which is pretty solid. And then has the attack gauge decrease immunity for those same 2 turns, which works out pretty good. On the A1, he's hitting a little bit there, has a little bit of a chance to put attack decrease up. Now this is crucial because part of his ability requires that the enemy has a debuff. So when the enemy is under debuff, that's when he launches his Stygian aura, where he gets those 5 extra hits. So if he's running by himself, you can set himself up with the attack decreased to 1. That being said, it goes on for 2 turns. So if the enemy is significantly faster than you, you might not get a turn in time to get an actual hit off for this. So this is one of the setup pieces for him that can be a little tricky. I usually run him alongside Morgan or another defense down champion such as Clarison or something like that, and that way this will proc his Stygian aura and he can just rip into this on every turn, although it does have a 1-turn cooldown, so it'll be on and then off. Another great thing about Caliburn Arthur, he's got the single target damage right here with his A2, but on his A3 it is an AoE ability that also smacks pretty good, and then he can also come in with the same debuff and trigger that Stygian aura ability with the extra 5 hits. Now that's going to be on a single target versus everybody, so you can smack everybody hard and then come back and really smack one of them really hard, also bringing up your vigor. But all in all, a fantastic champion, and I would argue that if you're looking to chivalry 10 anybody initially, he might be your primary focus, because he really is going to get a lot of stats moving to level 70 plus those extra chivalries, and that's when he can really open up his kit and smack for you. That being said, I probably wouldn't recommend using your mastery memory stones, because there are champions that you cannot summon in the game, but he would definitely be one I'd put on the wish list and try to get him up there as soon as you can. So he's clearly an S tier for me. So as we add champions, I think I'm going to try to scale these as far as who I think is the best and kind of move them down. So I do think Caliburn Arthur does edge out Aqua Guinevere in that space, at least for me personally. Aesthetically, he definitely is a better champion, but I do think that he has a little more use case, and her abilities kind of stem close to the Hound's favor, I think, as a lot of her kit, but she does smack as well. So we're going to kind of move through and try to kind of keep these in order as we go. All right, next up we've got Charlotte here, and probably not even worth talking about, going straight to trash. I mean, she's got effect resistance, hit accuracy increase 3, which could be good for Bedivere, but she's supposed to be your damage dealer, and she just doesn't bring a lot as far as that goes. Effect accuracy, attack speed increase, so she's not bringing attack, she's not bringing pierce, she's not bringing the things that you would expect for a attack champion. We have a revival chance where then she does more damage. Her kit is kind of clunky and hard to use, and I think ultimately she came in specifically kind of as an answer to Padarge, and there's just better solutions. So really in the one space she's supposed to excel, she doesn't really do very well. And then trying to build her where she dies, comes back, but is survivable enough not to die immediately again is really tough. And so just her entire kit just doesn't work for me, at least. Let me know if you disagree, but I'm gonna put Charlotte clearly in the trash category. And now that I see her all the way down there, I feel bad. I think she's gonna be alone down there. I don't know if there's another trash champion, but we're gonna find out. But she could definitely benefit from a rework. Next up, we have Clarison. I think Clarison kind of falls in the same category as Bedivere, where she is a good damage dealer, but she has been power crept a little bit. But one thing that brings her a step up, I think, is her defense down ability that she can bring in as well. But she does a pretty good amount of damage. She does ignore some defense with the passive there. She brings in defense decrease 2 on all enemies for 2 turns. And I think there on one of her abilities, she can also do it for 3 turns. Evasion rate decrease. So this can be really helpful with like Wyscalag when he gets all the evasion on him. It becomes very difficult to hit. So she can be a great champion for you in that space. As we move over to the passive 3, we've got the ability to reduce all of the cooldowns. And then we get the Jawbreaker piece here. The Jawbreaker ignores more defense, does some damage, and then also inflicts attack speed decrease. So slowing your enemy down, which is pretty solid. On the A1, we got a little bit of damage going on there, and that's going to be upon a critical strike. She's doing a little bit of extra damage. So you do, I mean, obviously she's a damage dealer, so you want to build her with crit rate, and you are going to get a little extra damage there. But compared to some of the other ones we've seen, that's pretty lackadaisical on the damage. And then on her A2, she has the AoE ability, which she's going to hit, and then also get a crit rate increase for 4 turns. Was actually pretty solid. I didn't realize it was that long, but she's going to help you get that crit rate up for 4 turns. And that is going to be just on her though. So, and then on her A3, she's going to attack 1 enemy, does a pretty good amount of damage, also puts in that defense decrease 2 for 3 turns. So between this and her passive, she can stack 2 of these abilities on, which is going to be pretty helpful. Ultimately, I feel like having the defense decrease is probably more her claim to fame, but she does have the ability to do some damage as well, but not quite as much as other damage dealers. But the versatility in her kit really comes from being able to put up these debuffs. So I'm going to put her in probably the A- tier as well as far as damage dealers. So we are going to place her slightly in front of Bedivere. One thing to keep in mind here, I didn't really think about, she does not have a leader ability, but frankly, there's a lot of leader abilities that going on your team. So I mean, you can kind of pick and choose the ones you want. But Bedivere does have a crit damage increased leader ability, which probably is pretty good. But I do think that defense down that she brings is going to make her a little more versatile and probably edge out the extra damage you're probably getting from Bedivere. So for me personally, I'd probably put her in front of Bedivere. All right, moving right along, we've got Claudis here. Now, Claudis is kind of a champion I haven't really spent a lot of time with, but every time I have used her, I have not been impressed. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. You got attack speed increase, so she's going to speed all of your allies up actually, so that's going to be pretty good. Hit accuracy increase is going to be good as well. As we move over to her second passive, when she does have that attack speed up, she increases attack gauge. She also can get attack increase as well as prepare skill 1, which I'm not entirely sure what that means. I think that she has a charge attack on her A3, so it might have something to do with that. But that is something that can go on as well. And then on the passive 3, she can bring in effect accuracy, amplification, reduce target's attack gauge, so she can kind of pull some turn meter away from the enemy, as well as attack speed decrease 2. Now that is all going to be on single target, so it's not going to be an AoE ability. But if you're trying to slow a particular target down, could be a benefit as far as that goes. We move over to our active skills. We're going to hit there. We do some attack gauge manipulation, again single target. And then on the A2, I believe this is AoE ability. We have grant each ally attack speed increase, and then total damage is okay, but it's not great. And then 80% chance to last hit to reduce attack gauge. And on this one here, this is an AoE ability. So for that to bring down 20% could be pretty beneficial. You probably want to build her with effect accuracy, but I think that she could definitely complement Morgan in some of those speed teams where you're trying to actually just lap the enemy multiple times. So she could be pretty effective in that space, but the damage she's bringing doesn't seem to be that big. I said she does a charge attack. She does not do a charge attack. That's Sigrun. I got that confused. My bad. So on this guy here, we have a 100% chance to inflict confusion, which is pretty cool. And then we do have a pretty good amount of damage coming in with that single target ability on the A3. But again, it's a single target smack and then confusion on one target. But if you were trying to build somebody around speed manipulation, she could be a great damage dealer to fit into that team. But with that in mind, I'm actually going to move her. I was thinking she'd probably be C tier, but with the attack gauge manipulation, I think we're going to go ahead and put her right here in the B tier, just because she does have some added versatility with that. I think her AoE ability does not hit very hard, and then her single target ability can hit pretty hard and add confusion, which is kind of nice, but I think really her claim to fame is not going to be the damage she's bringing as much as it's going to be how much she's slowing down the enemy team, and I think she was speeding up your team as well. Next up, we got Gawain here. That extra A in there always so Gawain. I just call him Gawain, but there's actually a Gawain in the game, so he is Gawain. But anyway, another champion that I haven't used significantly. I have heard different areas of the game that he does excel and can really smack with the right setup, but I think the setup takes quite a bit. So at the start of battle, he picks up Guardian of May for the rest of the battle as long as the weather is day. Chance to gain Guardian of May for the rest of the battle as long as the weather is heat. So maybe he stacks up twice. He also gets the hit accuracy increase. Guardian of May is attack increase and defense increase. So if you get those stacked on there, you're going to get an extra 20% attack, which is pretty solid, but it is contingent on the weather. So depending on who else you got on the fight, some of your other champions convert the weather to night or squall or whatever the case is. It's going to pull these buffs away from him. So you got to be kind of careful on who you're pairing him up with. When using skill 3, he's going to put it a day in heat to get him those extra buffs. He also has the charge attack gauge by 70%, and then damage dealt increase 1 for 1 turn. So that's going to be helping him get back around to his abilities, plus do a little extra damage with that damage dealt increase. And then at the start of battle, 100% chance to gain blessing, which makes him immune to debuffs and abnormal statuses. So that potentially could be a pretty cool benefit in the sense that if you have somebody that's doing different abnormal statuses on you, he would be immune to it. Specifically thinking about some of the confusion or puppetry that goes on with Lot and some of the boss battles or different areas in Forbidden Dungeon where he could potentially, negate some of those effects, which would be pretty cool. Although they might be unresistible, so I don't know that that'd actually be a benefit or not. As we move over to his passive skills, he can place defense decrease on for 70%. It's the small version, do a little bit of damage. It does go up for 3 turns, which is pretty beneficial. On the A2 here, he's going to attack all enemies, does okay damage, and then has a 60% chance to place a burn, and then 50% chance to inflict scorching heat, which is going to be defense down 40%. So that's basically a strong defense down or defense down 2, I believe, that he's placing on, but it's a 50% chance and only goes on for 1 turn. The problem with the things that go on for 1 turn is if you happen to put that on the enemy right before they take a turn, nobody even gets to hit them with that debuff on them. So like for me, if I'm trying to land a debuff, I want a debuff that's going to go on for a minimum of 2 turns, so at least I know I'm going to get at least 1 attack on the enemy with that. This is also only a 50% chance, which is kind of rough, and the burn 60% is kind of rough. A lot of RNG going on in this kit to make it work. There's better burn folks, there's better defense down folks, so ultimately, and I think this is contingent too on the weather being day and heat. So just defense down 2 is going to be better than this because it's going to go on no matter what the weather or the time of day is, instead of being contingent on these things, plus have a 50% chance, plus only going on for 1 turn. So you're trying to time that right, which is kind of rough. On his A3, he attacks all enemy 2 times. Pretty strong for an AoE, almost 200%. And then also has the 100% chance to put the Burning Sun up for 1 turn. Again, 1 turn. And that is when an enemy's hit, it removes a buff off of them. Assuming that the weather again is day and heat. So a lot of kind of contingent things on his kit that are going to be, you know, it just requires some setup. But the other thing to consider as I'm going through this, I'm going through on the relic they start with. Some of their other relics might be stronger, but this is just kind of what I'm doing as far as today. Another reason it's really difficult to put a tier list together for this game. But I think for me, I've got to put him low beer or probably high C tier list, just because I think other champions don't require as much setup as well as much weather conditions, and he just is very a conditional champion, and a lot of the debuffs that he does place only go up for one turn, so which is kind of a bummer, because like I said, if you put that on at the wrong time, it may not even provide a benefit at all, and you only have a 50% chance of landing it anyway. So I'm going to say he's probably C+, but we're going to put him down there in the C category. Next up, we're going to have Gilroy over here. Now, Gilroy he was recently promoted to a pretty decent champion, and I think it came with some of the versatility of his kit, as well as the need for additional damage dealers inside of the Hall of Conquerors, and he does have some synergy in the Bull faction that tends to work out pretty well. On his passive, he's for Bull favorite allies, he's giving you this attack increase 2 for 3 turns, which is going to allow your damage dealers to do a lot more damage in this space. He's also bringing effect resistance decrease for 2 turns on the enemy and critical strike damage increase for 2 turns. So just allowing your damage dealers to do more damage and then bringing their resistance down so your debuffs can land. So that's going to be pretty strong as far as that goes. When we move over here to recovery disruption, like short of Aldry, there's not really a lot of use cases for recovery disruption, but it does help if you're going in like arena against Nika teams and stuff like that, where they're going to keep healing themselves. It gives you the opportunity to kind of just get in the middle of that and stop, basically negate the use of that champion. As we move over to his passive 3, healing decay is kind of fun, where basically the heals that would go onto a champion do damage instead, which is really cool for Aldry because those heals are monstrous. Also for Nika, can be beneficial, but it's a timing issue. You got 3 turns, it goes on for 2 turns. It's kind of rough, but you do also get this defense decrease 1. So you're going to be on the here you're getting more attack damage for both favorite allies, plus more crit damage increase, as well as that you come over here and you bring their defense down. So there's a lot of pieces of his kit that allow him to smack pretty hard. As we move over to his A1, we got the recovery disruption. Again, kind of a limited need there. 78% on the damage, going to be pretty soft. Here you're going to grant crit rate increase 3, super strong, so you could actually theoretically build him with no crit rate, all crit damage, and then get this ability on him. It's going to increase, I think, 60% with 3 there, but it is on a 2-turn cooldown. Also going to pick up his attack speed and recharge his attack gauge by 60%. But this is not a damage dealing ability, so where this falls down is it does take a turn. So for Hall of Conquerors, every time you use this, you're not doing damage, which can be, you know, you only get 200 turns, so you got to get the damage in where you can. And then on the A3, this is kind of his claim to fame. It does smack pretty good, single target. If the target does have recovery disruption, deals additional damage of 200%, and that is where you're going to really get into his damage. You get 423% damage if you can get that recovery disruption up. So running him alongside your Brennans or other recovery disruptors could be a big benefit, and this attack also ignores 15% of defense. So not only is it going to smack really hard, it's going to ignore defense, and then it can put up a recovery disruption as well for 1 turn. The problem there is by the time that turn rolls back around, it's probably going to fall off, because if he's taking his turn, whoever you're fighting is going to have their turn before it comes back around. So it's hard for him, unless you build him fast, for him to actually be able to put the recovery disruption up himself, unless you're utilizing his A2, which then you're kind of wasting a turn, or your A1, which means you got a vigor problem. So he kind of needs a little bit of setup, but he can absolutely smack when you get him set up correctly. So in the interest of this being a damage heavy tier list, I am going to put him on the A tier, because when you have him set up, he absolutely does a lot of damage. That being said, do I think he's an overall better champion than these guys? I'm going to have to say no, but he does hit harder than them when he's set up correctly. So we're going to probably put him in that kind of middle A tier category as we kind of move towards middle to low A tier and then A minus kind of setup. But as far as overall champions, I would probably rather have Clarison myself just for the defense down as well as the damage. I think she's going to bring a little more versatility in that space, but he absolutely smacks with over 400% damage when you get everything dialed in right. Next up, we've got Hild, and I think Hild is a top tier damage dealer specifically for AoE damage, but it does require chivalries, and that's another thing that I haven't really talked about in all these cases. Like the chivalries, as they step up, are going to really change the way that a kit works, and so it's kind of figuring out when he's bringing in, or when she, in this case, when the champion is bringing in the function that you need from them. So like, for example, my Gilroy's probably not hitting at 400% right now because I don't have it. I think he's chivalry level 4. So I need to go in probably all the way up to chivalry level 8 because he's an older champion. For Hild, chivalry level 5, and I would argue chivalry level 6 is pretty crucial because you get a lot. She gains attack damage off of effect resistance as well as attack, and that chivalry level 6 gains, I think it's 15% attack or 10% attack and 15% effect resistance, or vice versa, but you're getting a lot of extra damage out of that 6 chivalry. But if we look at her first ability here, she's going to be working with the Steed's Favor with effect accuracy increase for 2 turns, and then we're going to be doing Weathering, which is basically her dot damage or damage over time. She's going to be doing a thing, plus it adds effect resistance and damage increase taken, and then also Wind Chill, which brings her attack up and effect accuracy, which is going to be pretty solid as far as helping her land those debuff, or the dots. The dots technically aren't debuffs, but yeah, her dot damage. On her second passive, when using skill 3, she's going to throw one of these Weatherings up there, and then she's for 2 turns, which you exploded anyway, so it doesn't really matter how long it goes on, and then she's going to charge her attack gauge by 100%, and then prepare Explosive Gust for 1 turn. So that's going to be basically her first turn is putting that up there, then she charges her attack gauge. It does this Explosive Gust, which is going to do the dot explosion as far as that goes, and it ignores some defense and effect resistance. There's a lot of stuff going on in there. Attack gauge for each ally by 30%. I actually didn't realize she did that, so that's actually kind of cool. So she charges up the attack gauge of your allies as well, which is pretty strong. And then on the A3 here, when attacking, and again, this is probably going to be when using skill 3 until you hit, you know, chivalry level 3 or whatever it is, but 100% chance to gain Wind Chill, which is those extra stats there. And then if you have 2 or more stacks of Wind Chill, remove all, and when it is removed, you get all these guys here. Attack increase 2, Steed Favors, get effect accuracy, you get the Weathering, goes back on the champion, it cannot be resisted, so in this case you don't even need to have effect accuracy, which is pretty strong as well. Her A1 is going to kind of tickle, but it does have a chance to put a chill up. Her A2 attacks 1 enemy and also has a 100% chance to put that dot damage up, so she can explode it. And it actually hits pretty good with the 195% plus extra for the resistance. So, you know, you could build that to be probably over 300%, maybe, you know, getting closer to 350, depending on how much effect resistance you get on her. But it could be it's a pretty tough build. Hild is a pretty tough build as far as that goes. But her claim to fame is her A3 here. She attacks all enemy 2 times, does 150% damage initially, and then she has the dot explosion that comes in, deals additional damage as well with if the target has dot. But this dot explosion comes in at the same time. That's a lie. It's on the A2 or the passive 2. So when using skill 3, so this guy here is going to stack on top of this, and that's where she does amazing damage. And frankly, like she can one shot when built correctly. She can one shot most teams in arena. And she just does this is a smack. She can take out Gorgos in 1 hit if set up properly. But her kit is very, very hard to set up, and she's very stat heavy. Like it requires really good gear to get the most out of your Hild, and that's going to be the biggest downfall to her. I am going to go ahead and place Hild in the S tier, but she's at the bottom end of it, maybe even A+, just because of how hard it is to get the right gear on her. Outside of that, she absolutely smacks, and she's a fantastic champion. So if you have the gear to get the stats you need, plus the high chivalries, you're going to be really pleased with your Hild. but she is a tough champion to build. All right, we're moving on to Iwer. We got quite a few going on. This video's getting long. All right, so Iwer is a great champion, but I do think that she has been power crept a little bit. Look at her passives here. She's going to get your crit rate increase on serpent favored allies. Also get effect accuracy increase serpent favored allies. So building her in a serpent team can be pretty effective. A lot of serpent synergy going on between Nika, her, Morgan. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that pop up that really make those teams really strong. Moving on to her passive 2, this Black Magic Wrath is going to be a pretty strong thing. It's going to be increasing crit damage as well as hit accuracy for 3 turns, and then charge the attack gauge by 50%. So just kind of cycling through her abilities. Available uses 8, so I'm not sure if after you use this 8 times in like some of the long Hall of Conquerors battles, if she's not able to use this anymore. That's kind of a bizarre thing to have on there. Long cooldown as far as that goes, so it takes a while for this to come back around. As we move over to her A3, while attacking, while she has that Black Magic Wrath, which I believe it turns into Black Magic Wrath on her Chivalry level 8, so you got to get her Chivalries up pretty high. 100% chance to charge attack gauge by 100%, and 100% chance to prepare Black Magic Annihilation. And this is going to be attacks an enemy, does 100% damage, and then attacks all enemies 120% damage, and the last hit inflicts a mark on the champion. Damage is increased by 35%, and it attacks up to 4 times. So this is where there's a little RNG in here, because I think it's 4 times at random. There is the AoE damage that comes in here, but it's going to be a pretty good hit followed by a pretty good hit. So when you stack those up, it can be fairly solid. And then it can come in with some additional damage as well. So it does go up there, but like comparing that to like Gilroy's 400% or some of those other, in the high 3s, you're still not getting quite as much damage out of her as other champions. But as we move over into her active skills, you got the 64% attack on the A1, placing Mark. You do want Mark on her because she's going to do extra damage. It lowers defense and evasion by 10, but it does, I think on her A3, it strips the marks and does extra damage or something like that. On her A2, you're going to get the attack one enemy 3 times, 180%. You're going to get crit damage increase 3, as well as crit rate increase 2, and that's all going to be for this champion. So that's going to be pretty strong, but it could be kind of a benefit if that was moving over to other champions and helping other folks do some stuff as well. But it is going to help her do more damage. And then attacks all enemies, damage at 138%, deals additional damage 1 time if target has mark. So if they have a mark debuff up, they're going to do an additional damage of 75% on top of the 138. Again, getting into the 200, which is pretty strong for an AoE ability. And then you couple that with the ability of getting these extra hits, and I guess, it does stack up quite a bit. She can do quite a bit of damage. So I do think that she is a strong champion, but I do feel like she has been power crept a little bit. And I think the setup of Mark is a little bit of a struggle, because you really would want to come in with this A3 right out of the gate to take out a team, but they're not going to have Mark on them yet. So unless you paired her with like a Sigrun or another champion that places Mark, had them go first, and then went right into Iwert's A3, that could be a pretty strong move, because you're going to get a lot of damage right out of the gate with that ability. Although you kind of also want to run her A2 first, so you get this decrease, or this crit rate damage increase, as well as crit rate increase on this champion for her next turn. So maybe running her fast and just getting this on and then getting to her A3 as fast as possible could be the way to go. But that, it just requires a little bit of setup. But I feel like I gotta put Iwer in the A tier. I have had her completely smack and destroy my entire team in arena more times than I can count. She is self-sufficient, meaning that she doesn't need other champions to bring in the debuffs to really help her smack, though it would be beneficial to get some defense downs and things of that nature. But I think specifically as an AoE damage dealer, she's probably one of the best AoE damage dealers in the game behind Hild. But ultimately I'm moving her in front of Bedivere and Clarison because of the amount of damage she can do from an AoE ability. I think is actually pretty strong. I don't think it's quite where Hild's can be, depending on on how you set her up with the dot explosions and whatnot. If you get some Lancelot and a Rosier going in front of her, she can do a lot of damage. I don't think Iowa has a chance of one-shotting Gorgos, for example. But I do think she's a fantastic AoE damage dealer. So next we've got the new champion Lucius, who is a fantastic damage dealer. What you're trying to do with Lucius is stack this arrogant confidence, and again, I think that steps up as you get chivalries on him. You want to get him to chivalry level 5. He also get crit damage increase here, and then Hound's Favor get effect accuracy increase as well. And then as you get more and more stacks of this arrogant confidence, which is going to stack up different things for you, it's going to give more attack, more pierce, more crit rate, which is going to be pretty solid. And then also on that passive too, he's going to increase the attack gauge of the allies, as well as Hound Favorite allies attack gauge at additional 10%, and a chance to gain a barrier that blocks 1 attack for 2 turns as well, which is pretty strong. On the passive 3, when using skill 3, if he has 3 stacks of the arrogant confidence, got rid of it. He's got a 100% chance to increase the attack gauge by 100% and get an extra turn, as well as prepare Gaia's Wrath for 1 turn, which attacks all enemies 3 times. Total damage is 108 attack. This attack ignores 10% of defense. So this is actually going to smack pretty good, but you got to remember this is going to be on top of the damage that he's doing with the 3rd ability. So if we take a peek at his active skills, we're going to hit for 80%. We do have a 100% chance to inflict decrease down the small version. So that's going to be pretty strong as far as getting that defense down. Although, again, you probably shouldn't be running your A1, otherwise you probably have a bigger problem. But anyway, pairing him with somebody that's doing a higher defense down is probably going to be a better bet. On the A2, it's an AoE attack for 2 times, and then it's going to hit with 128% of attack, 100% chance to reduce passive 3's cooldown by 2 turns. And that's going to be up here with passive is basically going to reset it almost, because if he's taking this turn, it's down to 2 turns, then it can brings it back up and makes it ready. And then on this A3 here, he attacks one enemy 3 times, total damage is 321%. Now that's going to go on top of, assuming he has 3 stacks of arrogant confidence, it's going to go on top of this extra smack that he's doing up here. So that's going to be a pretty solid smack, and ultimately it doesn't require a lot of setup. And I think that's one of the reasons he potentially, I'm not willing to put him in front of Caliber and Arthur yet, but I could see him potentially moving in front of Caliber and Arthur, just because with Caliber and Arthur you require that debuff up for the Stygian Aura to take effect, which can be a problem. Like sometimes you put him in a team, you're like, who's putting my debuff up? And he's not with Morgan, he's not with Clarison. All of a sudden you're like, oh, he's not going to do the damage I want him to do because I don't have a debuff. You can go back to his A1, get the attack down, I think he does, and then get the Stygian Aura. But again, now you're cycling through more of his turns. You want him to be hitting hard as often as possible. You don't want to be doing his A1. Whereas I think Lucius here is going to be a little more self-sufficient, and he's going to be doing over 400% damage when he does that arrogant when he has 3 stacks of the arrogant confidence. So I think potentially he could dethrone Caliber and Arthur, but I do think he's a fantastic damage dealer. So for the time being, I'm going to put him solid in the 2nd spot. That might change in the near future the more I play with them, but I do think Caliber and Arthur just smacks a little harder. I also like this. Something about this champion, I like it screams King Arthur to me. Like he's the epitome of the game. But that being said, that's not a reason to keep him number 1 in the S tier. But he is actually a fantastic champion for damage, and Lucius might do better, but time will tell. And last but not least, we've got Tristan here, and Tristan is kind of an oldie but goodie. There's specific areas of the game that he really excels, specifically pen bid. He gets multiple hits in, and he does quite a bit of damage actually. So on his passive, he attacks the target 4 times. Total damage is 232% of attack. If the target has protection, 100% chance to gain critical damage increase for 1 turn. So that's going to work great against Penvid, where he's doing 4 hits, putting the crit rate damage increase on the champion. So as soon as you get that barrier down, you're going to be doing more damage. And this again is on a passive, so he's going to do an additional 4 hits to whatever he's doing. It does have a 5-turn cooldown, but ideally if you build him right, you don't have to cycle through this more than one time for Pinvid. That being said, as you're going through the Hall of Conquerors, this is kind of a long cooldown to be getting those extra hits on. As we move over to a second passive, when attacking, if the target has protection, and that's going to be a barrier, shield, all those things that go with the protection. I clicked off of it again. 100% chance to reduce all the heroes' passive cooldowns by 6 turns. So that's going to help you move through that first passive again. And then you have 100% chance to charge attack gauge 80%. So he's going to get a second turn almost immediately. And then he's going to get a chance to prepare Transparent Throwing Star. And Transparent Throwing Star is going to attack one enemy 5 times. So additional 5 hits against that shield or barrier. Total damage is 100%. So it's not doing a lot of damage, but it is going to be getting those hits in that you need. And each point of attack speed increases damage per hit. Total extra damage per point is 0.6% attack. Now there was something in there that was a little bit broken. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but I think they had to nerf the amount of damage this was doing because people were building him fast and then he was just smacking. So that is something to consider on that end. As we move over to his third passive, when attacking, 100% chance to charge attack gauge by 60%. That's on a 5-turn cooldown, but pretty strong as far as moving him through his abilities pretty well. And 100% chance to gain attack speed increase for the rest of the battle, and 100% chance to inflict Bladed Gust on the target. Bladed Gust is effect resistance down and crit strike resistance, so just making them more susceptible to debuffs as well as critical hits. As we move over to his active skills, he got 75% of attack on that one there. Attack speed decrease for 2 turns, 80% chance, not too bad. On the A2, I almost never use the A2 to be honest with you, but attacks one enemy 2 times, total damage 106%. Point of attack speed again coming down to 0.3% of extra if the target has protection, deals additional damage 33%, and then attack speed increase for 3 turns. So pretty, I mean, it's not a bad ability, but he's not in there to really buff you up. He's really there to do damage, so I always go to his A3. On his A3, he's doing 231% attack as damage, plus the attack speed increase, which again makes it kind of hard to know exactly how much damage he's doing, but you couple that on top of these passives where I think it was the second passive here, Transparent Throwing Star, yeah. So you couple that on top of some of these passives where he's doing extra damage, and he can smack pretty good. He can take Pinvid out in a single hit by basically clearing all of his barriers in 1 turn, and then charging his attack gauge, going again, and then smacking him again 2 times in a row. I've actually been able to take out Pinvid in a single go with Tristan before, which is pretty fun. And then you also have this dealing additional damage 3 times, 99% down here. So that stacked on top of that, stacked on top. I mean, he can really smack. The one thing with Tristan that's a little bit rough is I think the cooldowns is something to consider. You do get this guy here, which will bring the cooldowns down by 6, but this only comes in every 4 turns. So that is kind of like, it's kind of a cycle on. You get 2 in a row, then you're cycled off. You got to wait 4 turns, cycle on, 2 in a row, cycle off. So it's just a little bit in that space there. But he can do absolutely amazing damage for you. And I think as far as Pinvid goes, he is an all-star. So I think I'm going to put Tristan at the bottom of the A tier. He used to be a B tier, and I think it was just because he was such a specialist. He's so focused on Pinvid, and frankly, Pinvid's not that difficult of content. There's a lot of characters that can get you through it, so I don't know that he's really necessary. Since we added Steel Flank Pinvid in the Hall of Conquerors, it has added to his versatility and kind of brought his value up quite a bit, and I think that is the reason he's bumping from B tier to A tier. Overall, as far as damage, he does do a great job. He's a fantastic damage dealer, but if everything for his kit, I believe, is single target. He doesn't do any multi-target. With his Flame Relic, he does a variable 8-hit combo, which is kind of too RNG heavy for me personally, but it's still not AoE damage. I mean, you could theoretically land all 8 hits on the same champion. But as far as single target damage, he does do a great job, but he doesn't have any AoE damage in his kit, and he is kind of a one-trick pony of bringing shields down. Now that there's more areas in the game to do that, it makes sense that he kind of moves up a little bit. But I think this is my tier list we got going on for the damage dealers. Let me know if you found this helpful. If you disagree, I would be curious to know what your thoughts are of what you would change about my layout here. Probably could move a few more out of the A category. Try to spread them out a little more. Maybe the Bedivere and the Tristan will move to B, but it's kind of tough because their kits are so different and where they excel in the game is different. And so it's kind of saying like, hey, you know, there's just areas that, you know, you really should focus your attention. But I can honestly say that if you have these 4 champions on your account, that it's a great place to start focusing attention. And then if there's specific areas that you're looking to press on, hopefully some of these other champions can add to that. So for the remaining categories in the game, like on the defense, there's only 3 legendary defensive champions, which I think is probably time we bring more in, would be pretty good. And then on the support side of things, we've got 6 of those. So maybe putting all of those into the same category. Or that's control. Sorry, that's control. These are support as far as that goes. So potentially I could do a video that kind of puts the rest of these guys into a tier group. But I mean, when it comes to support, there's so many different ways to support. When it comes to control, there's so many different ways to control. So it's kind of tough to really compare these guys. But we can go through and do the best we can. Let's see what happens. If you think that would be a benefit, put a thumbs up in the comments below. Just letting me know that that is a video that you'd be interested in seeing. And then whether or not you enjoyed this one as well would be helpful for me also. A couple folks have been requesting it, and I've been trying to kind of rack my brain on how to do a quality tier list. I don't know that this constitutes quality, but hopefully I put some thought into it, so hopefully you guys found it beneficial. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with me all the way to the end. If you haven't liked and subscribed to the channel, please do so. It means the world to me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.